Okay, so it looks like we're ready to go. I would like to call to order the Achievement and Communications Subcommittee meeting on Thursday, January 25th at 5:31 p.m. In accordance with Governor McKee's Executive Order 22-01 dated January 6, 2022, the Cumberland School Committee intends to conduct this meeting remotely. The public can participate in this meeting remotely, but not in person, by calling 1-646-558-8656, webinar ID 993-1960-8763, or they can join via Zoom by going to the Cumberland Schools website and going to the events calendar. The first item on the agenda is approval of agenda. I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Collins.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rogalski. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 3-0. I didn't, oh, sorry. Also, I don't think this needs a vote anyways, but I'll say compliance with Governor's Executive Order 22-01 dated January 6, 2022. Discussion on whether there's public access to the meeting through adequate alternative means. And Mr. Chandler, I believe we have access to the public. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from 11/2/2021.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Collins.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rogalski. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. The next item on the agenda is discussion of the Sr3 Funds. And we try to have this kind of meeting around this time every year when we're looking at the achievement related budget items and preparing us as we're in the midst of the budget season. So, Mr. Damana, over to you.
Sure thing, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. If you could give me a second, I'm going to share my screen so that I can present the few slides that I prepared this evening. I'm going to minimize everyone so that I can see what's going on, okay? Can you guys see my screen? It's loading.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to try and make the complex as simplistic as possible. Feel free throughout while I'm presenting the slides to ask us any questions that you have as we go along. So we submitted the Sr3 grant on 1/24, and it was an arduous process, and we were happy to finally get it over to RIDE. It is not a final copy that will come back and forth to us several times, I'm sure, over the next few months. So there are things that we can still substitute, change, and add and or remove from the actual grant. And so with our Sr3, we had 4 major goals, and we wanted to maximize the amount of funding. It was about $5 million worth of funding. The first goal was gap closure. We really wanted to focus on maximizing the number of positions that could help us do that across our buildings. We wanted to target our subgroups, which was a big piece of the Sr3 requirements. We couldn't just ad hoc put anything we wanted in the grant. There were specific criteria that we had to match whatever resources we were going to pursue with the criteria in the grant. And so the third thing that we wanted to do, you've heard Dr. Thornton talk about this a lot, we wanted to try to get to one-to-one, working with Mike in his office for our students in case we have to pivot to virtual learning. But just in general, it's good for our district to be one-to-one. Anyhow, it is 22 years into the 21st century. And so we also are going to pursue interactive boards for our classrooms throughout the district, and that's regular ed, special ed, all of our classrooms. That's the goal anyway. And then we wanted to allocate some money to handle some of the high quality curriculum requirements that the state has passed along to us so that we could reduce the amount of impact on the general budget. Any questions thus far? Again, I can't see you, so Madam Chair, I'll rely on you to guide me while I move through this.
Okay. I don't see any hands.
And so I'm going to show a pretty complicated slide, but I will explain my way through it. Keep in mind that of the $5 million, 60% of the funds were allocated in salaries and benefits alone. So almost to the penny, $3 million of the $5 million is in positions. So let's see if I can tab. If not, this is going to be an issue. Okay. All right, so this slide, what we were trying to do was simplify all of the positions that we placed in ESSER 2 and in ESSER 3. The total number of years we allocated the job within the grant, and of course we're bound by the money within that grant, so we had to do it this way. The total number of years that we would have the position, and then the most important column is column E, the final year of the job, when the job will expire. Originally, we thought that we could have positions in place in ESSER 3 through the year 24-25. And we learned recently that we were not able to do that. The funds had to be used by September of 2024. And even though fiscally we're in a new year, we thought we could add those positions and utilize the money in that last year. We learned recently, and this is to Kathy's credit for being detail oriented. We did some digging and we recognized that the funds could not be used beyond, or had to be spent by that September date, which meant it could not be allocated for positions. And so what you see to the left is we have the essentials positions and what schools they're allocated at. That's less important. The schools that we had to assign them to are relative to making the resources even in both middle schools. And so McCourt started out with more essentials teachers with 400 and some odd students, and North has 600 plus students, but has the same number. If you remember the RICAS presentation, that the amount of at-risk students is pretty equal in both schools. And so you see more NCMS essentials positions, but at the end of the day, they end up in the same spot in both schools. And that's 6 in each school for a total of 12. The grant is responsible for 6. The general budget currently holds 6. Lines 10 and 11, you'll notice that there are interventionists for McCourt. What we wanted to do is provide an additional layer of Tier 3 support at McCourt. Again, pandemic recovery being goal number 1. We really wanted to make sure that their tiered systems are in place to support those kids and dig them out of the whole pandemic. I'll pause there for a moment. Any questions so far between the essentials jobs over to line 11? Okay, none. I do want to point out one thing. You'll notice that when you're looking at the years in ESSER 2, you'll see some essentials jobs that are there for 2 years and some that are there for 1. You say, well, why is that? And how do they end up in the final year ending at the same time? Well, positions that we weren't able to fill that were supposed to be paid for in ESSER 2, what we're going to do is fiscally pay for those jobs next year in year 1 in ESSER 2, right? And then carry the job over another year in ESSER 3. So basically unused funds we're going to use the ESSER 2 funds first, exhume those, and then start to put those positions in ESSER 3 and start paying those salaries out of ESSER 3. The bottom line is that we lose a lot of jobs come the 2023-2024 school year, and you'll see in line F next to those jobs was not filled in year 1, with the asterisk in line F. Line 12, Rachel, do you want to say anything about the pre-K?
Yeah. So our pre-K has significantly expanded. Pre-K tends to go up and down. At one point, I think when I first came in, there was 5 classrooms or maybe 5.5 classrooms, and it's gone down to 4, then up to 5. We're now at 6, and by the end of the year, we need another half classroom. This is directly related, I believe, to COVID and the fact that kids are coming in, they're coming in undiagnosed, which is atypical. They're coming in with significant needs and without any services for most of their life. 5 of the early intervention agencies closed down over COVID, and agencies that did evaluations haven't done evals in over 1.5 years. The district did continue to do our special ed evals, and we've stayed on top of that and actually received 100% compliance on completing all those. So there's a tremendous need for preschool. I can't emphasize that enough. That also related to not just the teacher, but also the addition of another speech pathologist. As you may know, with early childhood, it's probably the most common service that we need. And we have a high population of students with autism, severe autism, and nonverbal students. So I needed that additional, and that additional person is busy. That's it. Back to you, Tony.
Thanks, Rach.
Sure.
Like a news broadcast. So we have the next 2 lines, 14 and 15, MLL, the MLL positions. We have Lindy, when we're done with the presentation, we can kind of circle back if we need to and get the other members of the team involved to answer more specific questions. But we have 2 MLL positions that I think are extremely important for a number of reasons. One at BF Norton, which is the feeder school, obviously, or the major feeder school to McCourt. And we've got to secure our MLL instruction and get these kids proficient as soon as possible. Speech pathologist, Rach, anything additional you want to add about that?
No, that's directly related to the increase in preschool.
Okay. So then we have the high school guidance administrative position. That job was slated originally in ESSA 2. We have not been able to fulfill that position. And so we're hoping that ESSA 2 monies can pay for that for next year fiscally, and then 1 more year thereafter out of ESSA 3 monies, which would mean the next 2 years we'd have that job, and then we would not have it. We'd start to, again, be in trouble, as you can see with those dates there. ISS coordinator, in-school suspension teacher. It shouldn't say coordinator, it should say teacher. That's a position that Dr. Thornton had asked that I add to the ESSA 3 budget for next year. Dr. T, anything you want to add about that? Pretty straightforward.
Sure. I guess before my time, that job was cut out of the budget because of budget crunch time, which I get. But we had a situation where we were kind of hodgepodge in coverage with teachers, and that's not how you want to do ISS, both from an instructional viewpoint and also a collective bargaining viewpoint. That's a collective bargaining job, and we cut it, and we're still trying to do it. That's not okay. So we needed to put it back, so I did.
Thank you. So we also have, if you can see there, interventionists, a few more interventionists at North, one of which was in ESSA 2, and that will expire, especially in math. ESSA 3, we're not getting it in, so that job concludes at the end of 2023. You'll notice that we also added a math interventionist at Cumberland Hill, which is a school that is definitely in need of some math support. In line 13, I did miss the interventionist at math at Garvin. So Michelle had asked us to consider providing her with a resource when we were doing ESSA 2. She was concerned about her math scores, and rightfully so. And we thought she needs a little bit more time to advance the school there with the number of at-risk students that they have. So we added 2 more years additionally in ESSA 3 to give her a total of 3 years before that job expires. So we've got a lot of things happening over the next 2 to 3 years. Hopefully we can make some gains. You'll also see line 22, middle school guidance, McCourt. That's an attempt at restoring some mental health at the middle school. I will leave it at that. Jay and Dr. Sano will be having other conversations about that. A few years back, we had 4 guidance counselors at the middle school, 2 at each school. It was a cut. We went down to 3, which is a 1.5 share at each school. And so we wanted to earmark a position there based on need and based on some data. Kathy, do you want to share that data real quick? It's a pretty simple, some pretty simple data that they could latch onto. Would you mind doing that?
Okay, sorry, I couldn't unmute. Do you want, I put a link in there?
Want me to click it?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
You're going to add to my tabs, Kath.
Sorry. So like Tony mentioned, we used to have 2 counselors at each school. Because of budget cuts, we went down to 1.5. So at this time, there's a counselor that travels between the 2 schools. So one of the problems is that at each school, that traveling counselor has a caseload. So if students need the counselor on, say, a Tuesday, and that counselor's at the other school, then that child can't be seen, or they have to, be seen by a counselor that they don't have a relationship with. And as we know, the pandemic has impacted students and their mental health, and we know that responding to mental health crises in a timely and efficient manner is vital. So some of the data we looked at were a questionnaire that students took at the beginning of the year. Has anything interfered with you being able to do your best at school? And 45% of kids said anxiety was interfering. We know anxiety has risen since the pandemic. 32.5% had they selected dealing with emotions, and 19% indicated friendship issues, and 18% chose family issues. So in addition to be able to see their students in a timely manner, if they're with their caseload all day, they can also provide targeted supports to those in need and work with students and colleagues to better reach the social emotional learning standards for middle school students.
Thanks, Kath. And so, like I said, Rachel will be following up with Jay on that particular mental health resource, but the money is earmarked for a year there. And then the last line isn't relational to any grant, but because we were able to add a position at Cumberland Hill, there's an internal move that we could just simply based on need. We can take a half ELA interventionist from Ashton and move it over to the community based on volume. And we've had a volume issue at community just simply based on the size. And so anytime we can reallocate resources, we certainly try to do that based on data. So I can provide this chart in an email. I can copy and paste it to the school committee. That way you have a chance to absorb it. And then if you guys want to, ask any questions after you have absorbed it, you can certainly do that. I'm going to go to the next slide and pause there. Is there any questions or anything, Mrs. Friedman?
Yeah, Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Demana. I just have a question about the positions. As part of the ESSA grant, the ESSA 3 grant, is the money available for salaries or salaries plus benefits?
It's salaries and benefits. So the $3 million, 3 of the $5 million is allocated to those positions that we just discussed, in addition to their benefits. There is a higher percentage rate that they charge on the benefits when you put positions in grants. And so the end result was a $3 million hit with those jobs to the $5 million. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how the other money was spent as well.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Demana. I'm looking back at my notes from, I don't know, maybe November.
Yep.
And I'm just curious at a high level if this has changed. what I captured back then was that in year one, we would add 11 jobs. There would be 11 jobs funded out of this. On year two, we would add 6 more jobs. So then we'd have 17 jobs in year two. And then in year three, we would lose 6 of those jobs. It would bring us back to 11.
Correct.
Is that still true based on?
No. Yes and no. And so we thought that we could get an extra year out of, I would say 6 or 7 of those jobs. And when that money became available, we decided to disperse it into either providing an additional resource to another school. For example, we wanted to add that resource to Cumberland Hill. And so there was some dispersion that happened. That money, and I'm going to talk about where else the money went. So because we couldn't get those positions for as long as we wanted, we added some jobs to fill some holes that we couldn't, and we had to make hard decisions prior to. And so we ended up with a few more jobs, here and there, like the ISS job, put that in. The high school guidance, we got another year out of it. So the original plan did shift a little bit. And so this is the most current. And then what I'll do is, as I go through the next few slides, you'll see how some of that money was additionally allocated. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So as you can see, this is the technology slide. And what we did was, with monies that freed up from not being able to use the funds for those positions in that third year, Dr. Thornton and Mike wanted for us to consider looking at providing one-to-one Chromebooks for grades 3, 4, and 5. And so we were able to fit in about 1,300 Chromebooks for our students to go one-to-one. And so, using these funds for one-time expenses is a good thing. And that was a big chunk of money. In addition to that, under column 2, you'll see that there's $750,000 allocated for interactive boards. That gets us approximately 300 more interactive boards or for the district. And then at that point, when Mike comes up with a distribution plan with us, we'll figure out what's left and how to get some more boards. We did leave about $193,000 of unspent monies in the grant. I was pretty adamant about having some extra monies unspent, just because you don't know what can happen when. And so we thought it would be safe to leave some money in the savings account there for something that may come up where Dr. Thornton may say, Tony, I need this, or whatever. For questions around PD, around the interactive boards, Mike had mentioned that the company that we're going to buy these things from, it's a combination of small group, virtual, and recorded webinars, and they provide that training free to the district. And we're going to have to plan how we roll out that PD. I will pause at the end of this slide, so that way you can ask any questions about technology.
Mr. Rakowski?
Thanks. So looking at the Chromebooks, how many 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders are there in the district?
Mike, do you have, if you're on, I hate to put you on the spot, but I'd hate to guess the number of kids.
At 3rd grade, we have 326, 4th grade, 349, and 5th grade, 341.
Okay, so we're not going to short anyone. We're not going to have to allocate carefully or choose schools or students.
Nope. No, that wouldn't be the plan. It'd be plan on rolling out that 3 through 5. And then as we roll up, what before we used to do the 6th grade will be the first one coming in. Now it'll be 3rd grade. At some point, we'll end up having to do 3 grade levels in a year versus the 2 that we've been trying to do. So,
okay.
When we accounted for the numbers too, we looked at the maximum class size. So even though at this point they might not be full, we ordered enough so that if each class was at capacity, there'd be enough for each student.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thanks guys. Thanks, Mike. Any other questions about technology?
I have a question, Mr. Devana. How,
Yes.
how are the 300 Promethean boards being allocated? 'Cause we have
We
more than
have
300
not-
classrooms, right?
It's going to be for classroom special ed, specialized programs as well. And my guess is that the new buildings, like for example, when Cumberland Hill shifts over to their new building, I'm sure, or I've heard rumblings that it may be a good idea to send them over to Cumberland Hill with their new technology, and then we still have.
Actually, Tony, if I'm right on this, and Mike, if I'm wrong, correct me. I think with Cumberland Hill, that's part of the bond. So you can take Cumberland Hill off the list, if you will, as far as the allocation. I think what you're going to find is with the 300, we'll certainly try to hit all the classrooms at the elementaries, the middles, then you get into the highs, right? And if we're short, 30, 35 boards, I'm going to say, Tony, we have that $190 over there. I need 30 more, please. So, our goal really is to make it a 21st century classroom, and that's the standard. You really need to do this. So right now we have a few in the district. Our teacher of the year got one a few months ago. We let him, kind of lead the way. But I think people are looking for this, and it's a good thing to happen. Our trick would be just the sheer volume of rolling out this. It's not something Mike and his team can do in a day.
Mhm.
It's probably something we'd kind of get support outsourced to kind of get these, hung on the walls, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
And so another rung, if you will, on part of our goals was to try and get the grant monies to buy a lot of this high price tagged curriculum that did not meet the criteria according to RIDE for high quality curriculum in our district. And so the things that you see up here, the four pieces that you see are the curricula add-ons that we put into the grant. If anyone would like to speak on behalf of the curriculum, feel free to do so. First, we have math 6 through 8 for 6 years worth of consumables, online platform, and PD. Basically, we wouldn't have to buy another thing for 6 years as it relates to math at the middle school level. Bullet number 2, go ahead. I'm sorry, did someone have something that they wanted to add?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Number 2, Wonders, the 3 to 5 ELA curriculum, WonderWorks, and the MLL piece to the curriculum. That rounds out our K to 5 ELA programming and curriculum for the elementary school. ESSA 2 took care of K to 2 and some other elements. And so ESSA 3, we were able to squeeze in 3 to 5 ELA, and that takes care of our elementary. Our math program at the elementary school did not have to be touched, so we did not do anything with that. However, Kathy and I have started discussions around, it creates linear issues for us. In other words, we had a K to 8 cohesive program, same Eureka math company that's linear for kids. They go through the entire scope and sequence with the same language and curriculum, K-8. And so half of the program qualified, but the middle school part of the Eureka program did not qualify as high quality curriculum, which forces change. As a result, now you have 2 different programs, 2 different sort of methodologies of instruction that kids are going to have to go through K-8, and it creates a kink. And so we have begun the conversations as to the benefits of adding math K-5 at some point. And if we see that scores in some way, shape, or form don't start to climb out of the basement, so to speak, we're gonna have to really look at that a little bit more closely. But for right now, it's not on the docket. Rachel, do you want to talk about 3 and 4? Do you want to add anything?
Yep. So both are more severe profound programs. Our students with more significant needs who are on alternate assessment. There's really has not been a consistent curriculum from them. Every year that I've been here, I have added content. pieces every year, but by putting it into ESSER, I'm able to add all the components that we'd like to see. This has to do with more direct instruction for reading and math and science and social studies, as well as online platforms. Again, some of these they have right now, I've been able to add them in slowly, but this would get us all the materials that we need, including the consumables. A lot of times we can only, I could only afford to do the print version where people have to print out. This will allow us to have the print version, but also the handheld books, which a lot of our kids really do need. Similar for preschool curriculum. As far as I can tell, they have not had an actual curriculum. They have the standards and then they create their own. So right now they are working on determining which of the RIDE approved highly specialized preschool curriculums that we're going to adopt. One of them that's been recommended and we thought was going to be a good fit is really not a good fit. So they're looking at a different curriculum right now, actually 2 different curriculums right now. And we should have a decision by the time we get approved for these funds. And then I know Tony didn't talk about this, but well, there will be some Individual Disabilities Education Act, some special ed funds that will be added into our common consolidated resource plan. And with those additional funds, I will be purchasing other curriculum materials for our students who are in a more of a resource model. So these curriculum materials are aimed at our kids who are more severe, that need direct instruction, that are not in the necessarily doing the same thing like Wonders. Then they may not be doing the Eureka math because of the content and language is too much, is not appropriate for their level of disability. And then with the IDEA funds, I'm purchasing materials that support the students who are in the regular classroom for their core content, but they need a lot of supplementary materials. So that's kind of how we differentiate it out, that we'd do some in ESSER and I would do some in the IDEA special ed funds. Are there any questions about that?
All right, thanks, Rach. At the bottom, you'll see we still need to purchase our curriculum for our high school. Melissa, who is also with us tonight, and Melissa, if you have anything you'd like to add, feel free to do so. But she's been working with instruction partners and with the entire high school. And certainly she has her teams they're in the process of selecting ELA and math curriculum. She has received quotes, and we're looking at about $550,000 for both the ELA and math curriculum combined. And those as well include a 6-year sort of all-inclusive package where we would have materials that would last us 6 years. Social studies, grades 6 through 8, we need to purchase. We started really solidifying our curriculum with the work we've been doing internally, but they do need what I think is a central nervous system type of base to work off of. And Deb had let me know today that's about $115,000. And lastly, ELA. Those numbers are still coming in because they're just now starting to go through the selection process that's begun with Bethany. And we're guesstimating about another $225,000 for that curriculum. So you're approaching, you can get to $1 million real quick. The one piece that I didn't put on here was math K-5, because it was not a requirement, but it's certainly something that may have to be done and may be a smart thing to do as we look at our curriculum numbers and our data over the next few years with RICAS. I believe this is the last slide. And so, all right, so where did some of the other money trickle to? We have Deb Rude, who has been our ELA and social studies curriculum coordinator. She's staying on board to help Bethany with the transition to the position. It is a very, very big job. Bethany is handling right now middle school curriculum implementation and work, pedagogical work. Deb is working on the Wonders implementation 3 to 5. So she's going to be continuing with us for about another year and a half as a consultant through the grant money. And we have a K to 5 grading system transition that we have to start, and she's going to help me with that as well. The professional development, Mr. Collins, we touched upon this the other night. I know that you've had some correspondences with Melissa. Lindy and I have talked about this, and this is a conversation we're going to continue, and certainly some of this will be on the strategic plan, but we wanted to allocate some monies for culturally responsive teaching and instruction, PD, whatever that looks like. And so we think $30,000 can help us start to focus on professional development, whatever the things, strategies that we want to implement in our district to move in that direction. We need money to do it. We put aside $30,000. If we need more, if Dr. T doesn't come calling, then we have that $192,000 we can tap into. We have to continue with our initiatives that have helped us grow over the past 6 or 7 years. SRSD, I believe that's allocated for more of this online web-based professional development type of PD system that we're going to continue with teachers. So we had to allocate money for that. Big one is building subs, very expensive, $300 and something thousand, almost $350,000. Years past, we've had building subs that allow us in the buildings at the elementary level that allow us to pull teachers in order to provide professional development. We've since lost that resource. And so providing building subs is a much needed help if we have monies available that can help with that. And then the mental health, which is always a question, what are we doing to address that? I just put those positions down, keeping in mind that the guidance, the middle school level is just recent, and that's an ongoing conversation with Jay and his team. And we talked about the other pieces there. And so with that,
Tony,
yeah,
can I talk about the school psychology intern just for a sec?
yeah, please.
So just so people are aware, we're able to get school psychology interns out of Rhode Island College, and they only cost us $10,000. And unfortunately, there have been years where, at least 1 year since I've been here, where I didn't have the funds. Rhode Island College likes this placement so much for their students. They actually paid for that student to do their internship here the year that we couldn't afford them. These folks work very hard, and we've been able to, I believe we've hired 3 of the interns over the years because of the high quality of which they provide to the district. The most recent one, he wasn't from the Rhode Island College one, but Dylan Eng was hired from an internship position. So they're really needed, and $10,000 is nothing, but sometimes I can't figure out how to shove it into the budget.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop my share. That way, if you guys have any questions or you want to discuss certain positions, Mr. Collins.
Thank you for such a thorough presentation, you and your team. I do have one question though. As part of the ESSER training funds, was any consideration given? I know consideration was given, but regarding AP training for high school teachers, will that be available in the next cycle or down the road?
Melissa, do you want to take that question, or do you want me to answer it?
I'm fine taking that question. So, Adelpho and I have been talking about this a lot. We actually already reached out to a lot of the teachers with resources like webinars and requesting that they use some of the resources that AP provides, such as AP Classroom. We did a bunch of walkthroughs and found that the teachers that were doing really well were using those resources regularly and pulling in practice tests, etc. So we've been kind of having that ongoing dialogue with about AP. I think we've already sort of outreach to everyone saying, you know, if you're interested in PD, let us know. But I'm going to be having a conversation with Adelpho up and coming about budgeting for that PD as well in the high school budget.
But if need be, we do have that extra money set aside, because I'm also considering if there's any sort of change in personnel. You have new teachers coming on, they're going to need to be trained in some capacity in the next couple of years. So it'd be nice to have that set aside. Or maybe you identify teachers who could use a little extra training. And I know this time of year too, it's like you get these emails and it's like that is so far away, you forget to respond sometimes. So as long as there's a consideration, I'm okay. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
I just want to add real quick. I'm sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
You all done? I just want to add that if any positions that are in ESSA 3 make Dr. Thornton's budget proposal to the school committee, and should the school committee pass a budget with a few of the jobs from ESSA 3 that we know we want to commit to, then that just frees up that much more money in the ESSA 3 grant. So I just wanted to make that clear. The 192 is just a number, but it's a butterfly number. It could fluctuate quite a bit depending on what we do.
Oh, Mr. Rogalski?
Thanks. So I know I've been on the committee for a year, but I still feel like a child who doesn't know a lot of things yet. These positions, you're talking $3 million in 2023, 2024, that's the last year. After that point, they're gone, correct?
There are many that come off before that, but the majority of them, so if you kind of think of it in terms of about 70% of the jobs will fall off in 2023, 2024, but about 30% of the jobs trickle and kind of go away before that.
Okay, so I guess I wonder, how do you transition out of that? How do you transition back down to where we are now once we've had that nice bonus in this set structure? And I don't know what the answer is, and I don't, obviously there are budget things involved, but I mean, that's a huge chunk of money that we would have to come up with to keep these positions, which seem incredibly important to the success and growth of the district. And so I don't know kind of what the thinking is, or if anyone else even knows yet. How do we transition back down?
I can start on that. So I talked with Tony a lot about that. And if we have, say, 17 or so jobs, we talk about there are probably, say, 10 that we want to keep forever, right? So that's why I've been talking to the city council and the mayor about, if I can get 3 ESSA jobs each year for the next couple of years on the books, there's no cliff when this ends, right? If I get 2 or 3 a year, I've taken away the lion's share, the ones we want to keep. If we don't do that, though, and every year we kind of just balance the budget, we're tight, we go, Cumberland, then I think we'll have a problem with a big cliff in a couple of years, like you said. So it's important right now in the budget remodeling. We don't have all of our numbers in yet, but we know we want to get technology, as you heard about, and some ESSA jobs on the books. That's really the goal.
Yeah, thanks. And I just want to add, there are going to be some unhappy people because, the guidance position, may not be one of those. There are still going to be some difficult decisions that have to be made. The interventionists are probably the most flux positions, right? We're front loading, we're giving these schools the resources to pull their at-risk population and minimize the percent of kids that are at risk in each of the schools. And if we're able to accomplish that to a number where the general budget could support the interventionists and not have to add 3, 4, 5 of them in a grant, in a 3-year cycle, if we are able to do that, then those jobs, like I said, we can comfortably, we want to get rid of those jobs per se, because that means that our kids aren't struggling, right? So we have fewer kids struggling. We can do that. Will we be able to accomplish it? We shall see.
Now, just one more quick question. Going off of that, knowing that these are grant funded positions, do you anticipate any problem filling them? With people knowing there is, in theory, right now, you're only going to be employed for a year or 2 years.
Oh, for sure. It's always a question when I interview candidates for these jobs. They come through our office, they come and meet with myself and Dr. Thornton. And the first question they always ask me is, and so, is this going to be a job that's going to be around? And you have to be open and honest with the teachers, and letting them know what they're getting into. And if it's a position that we want to keep, we let them know that. I'll tell them, this is something that's part of our program plans, but we can't promise anything. So it's certainly a factor.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So Mr. Demonis, that covers, oh, wait a minute, which agenda am I looking at? That was agenda item number 3, right? The whole, sorry, I've got the wrong agenda.
While you're looking at that, keep in mind that the principals just recently submitted the budgets to Dr. Thornton and Alex, and the central office team, and we've just started to go through those. There could be positions in there that they have asked for, that my team may not be aware of, and that may come up. So they've got to make their pick, Dr. T.
Right. So the discussion of the Sr3 funds is what we just went through. The next item was the discussion of any other achievement related to fiscal budget 2022, 2023. Was that covered in your presentation, or is this additional?
No, there are 2 things that I just want to really briefly mention, and then we can provide further detail at another meeting. But there have been 2 major holes in our work and achievement. One has been an all-inclusive sort of database that allows us to have all of our data in one place, including internal data assessments, and not having teachers go into 8 or 9 different apps and websites. It's extremely laborsome. Data analysis and statistical analysis isn't for everybody, and the more you can streamline it, the better. The worse it is, the more you avoid it. So we are pursuing, Shannon, Melissa, and Lindy have been pursuing a database that basically is it's a system connected to something we already use with Renaissance, but it's sort of on steroids, and for lack of a better term. And so we are pursuing that. Those costs will be in my budget when I present it to Dr. Thornton. That would solve a big problem moving forward. And then number 2 is a curriculum mapping network. And one of the things that we've got to start to address is the transparency of our curriculum. Not that it's not transparent, but right now it's everywhere, right? And so when we bring in programs, it doesn't mean that someone can very easily understand what's going on in grade 3. And so Melissa and some of the other members on our team attended a webinar on something called Chalk, as in board chalk. And Melissa did a screencastify for us on the tenets of the actual system. And it's basically a live curriculum mapping system that is pretty comprehensive. And when we're ready and we feel like we've got a handle on the things that it can do and why it'll be beneficial specifically, over the next 3 or 4 weeks or so, we'll come back and do a short presentation on having you guys understand why it's really important to have that. All right, so those were the other 2 things that'll be. Are they super expensive? No, it depends on what we call super expensive, but it's nowhere near the numbers. It's a fraction of the numbers we're talking about with curriculum. That's really it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I know Dr. Thornton, Amy asked Mr. Rogalski asked the question about positions that we want to try to keep. And I know when we do meet with the town council that, you know, we're getting crisp on our message about what are the things that we want to be pushing for in this coming year. And we know that there's challenges all around. But I think, Dr. Thornton, you were hammering, you know, 3 positions in technology. I think that was your mantra.
It was, I was trying to keep it simple, and, you know, that is really what's on my mind. I know we're seeing all the buildings and budget folks next week. So if anything else surfaces, we'll have a whiteboard in the room. We'll, you know, be putting it down, and, you know, we'll see. We have to rank things, right? I'm sure we'll have more than 3 things we want, right?
Mhm.
But it's a question of just able to get it in the budget and, you know, have everything balanced. But yeah, we'll have more detail, I think, when we meet with the council in about what, week and a half?
Yeah, I've got to finalize that date.
Yeah.
Kinch, but yes. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments about the budget, Mr. Collins?
Can I just add something? I just want to point out that I want to thank Mr. Demond and his team for the turnaround. You know, a lot of these items we've been talking about for a while, especially with the AP training, you know, cultural proficiency, some of these things, and with COVID looming over everything, it's hard. You know, we have to walk and chew gum, as you know. But you know, I saw Mrs. Demana last week at just a preliminary budget meeting, and I mentioned some of these things again that we discussed tonight. And the next morning, I had an email from Melissa, and I'm not just some little, you know, courtesy email. It was very detailed. So I really do appreciate the turnaround. I wasn't expecting the email so quickly, and it just gives you an indication of how well and thought out everything is, and how, you know, just proof that these things have been considered, and, you know, we're not leaving any stone unturned. So thank you for that. You know, it's greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you. It helps to have the resources when you guys support us, and, you know, we appreciate that support, because when you have people that can hone in on the details, it just makes us a more efficient operation, you know.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Devana and your team for this. I know more to come, and, you know, I think it's important that we stay close to this, and as a committee that we can help to advocate for, you know, the things that you need. And as I said in a previous meeting, you know, you and your team have a proven track record of being able to dissect and pinpoint, you know, what we need to do in order to address the needs that we have. And I think that is, you know, certainly helpful and an important message for the rest of the community, that, you know, you've got a plan and a strategy for how we can keep moving ahead. So thank you to everyone for that. And the next item is discussion of future topics. And I know, Mr. Devana, we've talked about the strategic plan and the school improvement teams and the schools, you know, each school coming in to share with us the work that they're doing relative to improving and all of that. So what are some ideas that you have for what you'd like the achievement committee to stay focused on?
Sure. So far we've received 3 school improvement plans. I've given a due date, and I will have them from everyone. It hasn't arrived yet, the due date. And so I've just started to review them. And that's going to be sort of the strategic plan is 2-pronged. It's sort of the district vision and goals for the next few years, and then the school-based goals. And those school improvement plans are going to drive the work on the ground. And I think it would be important to have conversations with the principals specifically on what their plans are, because it could frame things that the school committee has in mind for the strategic plan for the district academically or in other areas. And so, you know, if you want offline, we could start to talk about the schools who've already handed them in that may be prepared to come, and you may be able to get a few in a night, you know, maybe spend, 30 minutes or so with and have 2 schools done in one meeting. But, you know, that's up to you, and we can certainly talk about it more offline if you'd like. The strategic plan, on the strategic plan end, if you want me to do a general framing before you talk to the schools on how it's being constructed and built, I have about 14 pages of it sort of done right now, and it's just a framework, and I'm just starting to put things in. And I've asked team members to create 3 and 4 year plans for their own areas of specialty. Like, for example, Dr. Santa, her 3-year vision as it relates to the strategic plan, HR, Alex, 5-year plan, financial. So it's going to have many components to it.
Mhm. Okay,
It's a lot
excellent.
of work.
Yeah,
By the way, Kathy and Deb, everybody did a tremendous amount of work when it comes to UCOA codes and getting things onto the ESSA grant. I did not type in one thing on the computer as it pertains to the ESSA grant. They did all the work, and it was a tremendous amount of work. Every little change, every little shift, it's a lot, not just simple data entry.
thank you. Any other comments or topics the committee would like to add to our list? Mr. Collins?
I just have a question. When is are you currently, it's going to be soon, doing internal STAR testing? Is that ongoing? When will you have that completed and the data compiled?
So I'll give that to Shannon and Lindy.
Our window closes on February 8th. It may have to be extended because of people out with COVID. So that's kind of like our deadline is February 8th. So we'll have our data hopefully by then.
So if we're talking about future topics, since you were so close last year with your prognostication, once you were able to break down the data, I'd be curious to see what it says, just so we can get an idea of what we could be looking at with RICAS.
We have
So next month, some point.
Yep,
Yeah.
we have a case study of historical data that's kind of puts it all in one place, and we've been adding to it to see where we are today versus where we were 3 years ago pre-pandemic. So we kind of look at that, and we try to make it easy to follow. So we'll figure out a way to make the data palatable, so that we can make some comparisons and share that with you all. And if we get that platform, we don't have to we can just run reports. We won't have to really populate it in different ways, and saves a tremendous amount of time.
Okay. All right. If there isn't any more discussion about future topics, the next item on the agenda is public comments. If there's anybody from the public, I don't
There is
see.
not.
Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is adjournment. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Collins,
Second.
second by Mrs. Rogalski. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:29 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
All
you.
right. See you Thursday. Bye, guys. Good night.
Good night.